Hey y'all, so for today's unscripted video, I wanted to elaborate on what I was talking about in my Friday short video that I did, which was about honesty. And I wanted to just sort of share with you my experience around how honesty has brought about change in my life. Because I think sometimes we underestimate just how powerful it really can be. So, in regards to my eating disorder, one of the first things that I had to do in recovery was get honest about what I was doing with food. That meant that I kind of had to write down a list of the foods that I knew I was eating compulsively, and once I started, I couldn't stop. And the whole idea is when I wrote down that list, it's not that I was immediately lifted of the desire to eat those foods, but that the shame around it started to lift because I was being honest about what I was doing. And when I got honest about what I was doing, I became conscious about what I was doing. And slowly but surely, I found that the consciousness brought about the willingness to make a different decision. And for me, there's a huge spiritual component to my recovery that really involves admitting the fact that I can't do this by myself, that I've been doing it one way my entire life and it hasn't been working for me. And maybe, there's this saying like you can't fix a broken mind with a broken brain. So honesty is what just started me to start to think about maybe there's a different way of doing this, and maybe the way I'm doing it isn't working. And everybody in eating disorder recovery does not, abstain from certain foods. They might abstain from certain behaviors or different things. This is just simply what I had to do as someone with binge eating disorder and morbid obesity. And once I identified that flour and sugar were two things that once I combined those ingredients and I had that, I could not stop eating it. I just started to have a deeper level of awareness for myself. And then with my porn addiction, I remember the first time I talked to anybody about it. And it was one of my people that was mentoring me in my eating disorder recovery. And I remember I couldn't not talk about it anymore because I knew it was one of those things that I was eating over. And I called him up and I was like, I need to tell you about something. And I basically told him about my porn addiction, and I told him about everything I was looking at online. And this was when I was like 21 years old, and I had never told anybody about this. And just the act of me sharing it with someone else, that sense of shame and that sense of secrecy began to get lifted. And there's just so much gem in being honest. And what I've learned too is that there's different types of honesty. There's cash register honesty, where we can tell the bare minimum and still get away with our kind of shitty behavior. And then there's the kind of honesty that is very deep and soul-searching honesty. And it's something that I've really have come to value in my life. And it's now something that I feel like in my heart, or even physically, like in my chest, or like somewhere between here and here. I can feel like I'm not being fully honest with myself about this thing, whatever it is. And I also think that honesty is a muscle that we learn to work, and we have to practice being honest, because I know a lot of us grew up in households where if we chose to be honest about what we were feeling or what we were doing, we would get punished for it. And I think that growing into adulthood for me, honesty was really about me coming into myself in a very different way. And then even with my love addiction, I had to get really honest about the ways I was hurting myself in relationships and the way that my behavior was hurting someone else. And I had to get really honest about what I was really looking for in relationships. And it was so painful to finally admit that what I really wanted was someone to save me. I wanted someone to tell me I was enough. I had to really see all the ways in which I wasn't being as loving of a partner as I could be, because I selfishly needed so many things filled in me that were so empty. And another saying that I've learned in recovery, you have to fight for your right to be uncomfortable. And when we get honest, we get really uncomfortable, because I think honesty, integrity, and vulnerability really go hand in hand. And you can't really have one without the other. And that's something that I've really had to work hard on. And then even with like career stuff, you know, when I really started to take a risk with putting videos out and making my content, I knew that I wanted my content to be as real and as vulnerable as it could be. And I've tried to make videos where I don't share the full truth, or where I try not to be as honest about my thoughts about something, and my work suffers. And a lot of that fear about being honest comes down to the ego and caring about what other people think, and that fear of people not liking you if you're honest about how you feel about certain things. And what I've found in my life is that honesty is not something that pushes people away. Honesty is something that attracts the right people into your life. And I've had to really learn how to trust that, and trust that in honesty, we also learn how to allow people to leave our lives. And another thing about honesty that I've really learned that I still struggle with is I thought honesty was about bluntness, and that it didn't mean if we hurt someone else's feelings. But the reality is, when we're so blunt to the point that it hurts someone's feelings, we're actually not being honest. For me, when I'm doing that, I have an ulterior motive, which is not honesty. It's the ulterior motive of I actually want to hurt your feelings rather than help you. Which is why I think it's really taken me a long time to realize that honesty with myself and with others is really about compassion. And as far as my spirituality in regards to honesty, I have found that sometimes in my inability to be honest with myself and someone else, my shame can be so deep, or my embarrassment or my anger or my resentment can be so strong that I don't even want to take it to God. And I found that sometimes it is actually really helpful that God works through people, your higher power, whatever it is, the universe. Doesn't have to be a religious God. But I found that sense of connection to something bigger than myself can happen when I share these things with someone else, because it just opens up that space. And when I connect with someone else around my truth and my honesty, it creates that space that allows something bigger to come in. I guess I've been thinking a lot about living an authentic, honest life, and sometimes wondering, am I living this real authentic life? Could I be farther ahead than where I'm at? Like, where could I be in my life right now if I was more authentic or more honest or more real? And I think what's important to remember too is that we grow into ourselves. We grow into deeper levels of honesty with ourselves. And that's what experiences are for. It's for deepening levels of truth with ourselves and who we are in the world. So that's my video on honesty and how that has shown up in my life. Because I believe that if we're going to change anything, it has to start with honesty. And for me, honesty is the road to change. And I don't believe that there's a shortcut to making changes in your life. But what I have found is that the road becomes less windy when I get honest. The road becomes a little clearer. It doesn't mean that it doesn't take as long, but when I get honest, I'm not trying to take so many twists and turns to run away from something to get there. There's one thing I've learned is the truth is going to come out. And if it's not going to come out in what you say, it will come out in how you treat people. It will come out in what you're avoiding. It'll come out in what doesn't show up for you in your life because you're scared to allow it into your life. Thank you so much for watching this video. And in the comments below, tell me, what is honesty to you? And if you're brave, what is something that you were so scared to get honest about, but you were finally willing to do it? I'd love to see like how deep you guys go with this, or how real you go with this. Because there's a lot of things that it's scary for us to get honest about, and there's just so much bravery in it. So thank you so much for watching this video. Please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed, and also follow me on all the other social media platforms. I love you all very much, and have a great start of your week.